Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Lionel Mittelpunkt. I'll be your facilitator for today's webinar. As someone deeply involved in community building and spiritual guidance, I understand the critical importance of maintaining connections during challenging times. Together, we'll explore the impact of social exclusion on children and the innovative solutions being developed to address them by Kנפי דרור and our esteemed guests. With that, I'm honored to begin with a special message from Mrs. Michal Herzog, wife of Israel's President, Mr. Herzog. Mrs. Herzog has been a steadfast advocate for children's well-being, especially during these turbulent times.
Shalom, friends. I'm so pleased to share a few words with you as you come together from so many different places for this Kנפי דרור webinar today. I know that anyone who is with us is someone who cares deeply about Israel and cares deeply about education, because you're coming together now with intention to give attention to a very serious subject, the question of social violence within the Israeli school system and its implications for all of Israeli society, especially at this difficult time, as we look toward a new school year amid so much uncertainty and crisis. My friends, often the path to creating broad change begins with the courageous decision to transform personal pain into a force of healing for others. Chagit and Shaike Elami are two of these courageous people, and all of you here are part of the unfolding process of their courageous decision, the decision to take the pain of their beloved Dror's struggle and transform it into a force of healing for others. Dror, a beautiful, wise, and exquisitely sensitive young man, was eventually overcome by the residual scars that had stayed with him since being ostracized as a child. His family knew that Dror's story is not his story alone. It is a story that belongs to all of us, not only because of the disturbing data of how common social violence is in Israel, but because when children act with cruelty toward one another, it is the adults that must step forward. It is we who must cultivate empathy, humanity, and social responsibility in our children. And it is we who are responsible for building communities in which our children can feel safe. I believe strongly in Kנפי דרור's model, which moves the burden of response to social violence to the adults in the children's lives, to parents, educators, and communities. And I believe, as they do, that it will indeed take a village to change the social structures that lend themselves to bullying and exclusion. Dear friends, especially in these challenging times of so much upheaval and transition, it is upon us to make sure our children can find a sense of home and belonging wherever they are and whoever they are. I want to salute Chagit and Shaike Elami and the entire Kנפי דרור team who are actively working to build the community response tools and resources that are so critical to individual well-being, while also working to change attitudes from the ground up and to cultivate ties between our Jewish communities worldwide in the process. They're turning Dror's memory into a force of so much good in the world. I thank them and I thank each one of you.
With this, I would like to invite Shaike Elami, founder of Kנפי דרור, and Orit Raz, CEO of Kנפי דרור.
Hello, everybody, and thank you to join us for this special webinar. I'm Shaike. I'm father of Dror. We established Kנפי דרור as we take our because we want to in our son name to save life and save soul, and take his memory as a power to change the world. The mission of Kנפי דרור is change norm. The mission of Kנפי דרור in change mindset. And our mission is, as I said before, is help any children, any place, save life, save soul, and make a national change in this issue. So again, thank you for joining us in this webinar, and we are very happy for this partnership. Orit.
Thank you, Shaike. Orit Raz, CEO of כנפי דרור. Now we can hear you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Shaike. These issues are often overlooked by the wider adult community, dismissed as inevitable aspects of childhood social dynamics within the educational system. Too often, we hear the refrain, "There is nothing we can do about it." But this experience leaves deep, lasting scars. Victims carry the wounds into adulthood, as described by Noam Chorev, because a child who has been ostracized never really heals. He only dresses as an adult. In the most extreme cases, the pain ends in tragedies like suicide, devastating families and communities. At כנפי דרור, we are determined to change this narrative. Our mission is to lead a relentless fight against ostracism and social exclusion, shift public perception, and develop effective solutions for children and parents in crisis. Our goal is nothing less than a profound societal transformation, saving lives and fostering a culture of empathy, inclusion, and support. Today, over a year into the ongoing war, the need for our work has only grown more urgent. Children and adolescents across the country have been deeply affected, particularly those evacuated from the north and south. Stress and emotional upheaval have created fertile ground for increased ostracism, exclusion, and social violence. This is why our work is so critical. Thank you for being here for this in-depth discussion about the challenges we face and the innovative solutions we are developing. Your continued support enables us to pursue this life-saving mission, bringing hope and healing to those in need. Together, we can make a difference.
Thank you. Thank you, Orit, and thank you, Shaike. Today's conversation will start with our two esteemed guests, and we'll be talking more about the last year here and the impact of the war and how cultural and the psychological aspects affect children. Afterwards, we will meet Sarit Tabib-Milman, who will share more about the work that כנפי דרור is doing and showcase some of the innovative tools that they've been using for the last year. With that, I'm pleased to introduce Yael Avraham. Yael is an educational psychologist and a family therapist. She lives with her family in the southern part of Israel. For over 20 years, she has worked with children who experience peer rejection. She also wrote a book titled The Rejected Child, which has been translated into 5 languages, including English. Yael, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to talk in my short lecture about some of the emotional challenges the children in Israel are dealing with during the war. I will define an event as a crisis using the continuity principle. I will show you a short presentation. What is the continuity principle? This principle emphasizes a fundamental human need for continuity, the assurance that yesterday predicts tomorrow. When a crisis occurs, the continuities in our lives are disrupted or completely severed. So we can talk about several types of continuities. For example, the cognitive continuity. What is the cognitive continuity? I have knowledge about my world and I understand my surrounding. I have a schedule, I have a routine in my day-to-day, I know where I live, I know my surrounding. There's the interpersonal or social continuity, which relates to the circle of family and friends with whom we share our feelings and thoughts, and they support us. There is also the functional continuity or role continuity, which relates to the various roles we hold throughout our lives. For example, about myself, I have many roles. I'm a psychologist, I'm also a wife, a mother. Similarly, a child has many roles in his life or her life. She's a daughter, she's a student, she's a friend, okay? And there is another continuity, which is the beliefs and values continuity. We hold certain beliefs about our world, such as, I believe that I'm safe in my home, or I believe that people are good. Continuities provide the children with a sense of stability in a changing world, helping them to feel organized and in control. We assess or we evaluate the severity of a crisis based on how many continuities have been damaged, disrupted, or completely severed. So I can tell you an example about a child named, I will turn this off now. I can give you an example about a child named Daniel. He's living in kibbutz Nachal Oz, right next to Gaza. On October 7, both his father and grandfather were killed while trying to protect their home. Afterward, Daniel and his mother and his little brother moved several times all over Israel. And I eventually met them in northern Israel. Daniel refuses to go to school, stating that he prefers to stay home to protect his mother and his little brother. When I talked to him, I noticed how many continuities have been disrupted. So if I bring back the continuities, you can see now that if I go back, you can see that his cognitive continuity have been damaged. He does not have his routine, his schedule. So you can see that there is a damage in this continuity. Also, his social continuity have been hurt because he doesn't have the circle of friends that he's used to have. Most of them are spread all over Israel. Also, when we talk about beliefs and values continuity, he told me, I believe that nothing would happen to my father. I thought he was so strong. So what can we do to help a child in this situation? I wrote 2 words, whether encouragement or restoration. I mean, we can encourage a child, for instance, if the role continuity, as happened to Daniel, is being damaged, doesn't act as a student, he stays home. So we can encourage him to take a role that fits the roles he should have, like give him a little role, such as, can you give your little brother a glass of water? Or we can try to restore a damaged function. For instance, if a child cognitive continuity is affected, we can provide him with accurate information and explain what happened in the past, what is currently happening, and what is expected to happen in the future. In Israel, following October 7, many children experienced significant disruptions in their lives. Over 50,000 students were evacuated from their homes, creating a need to develop new tools, and make them relevant for as many kids as possible. This is exactly what we aim to achieve in Kנפי דרור, and later in the webinar, you will hear about those tools. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Yael. And now I want to introduce Rabbi Mishael Zion, founding director of the Mandel Program for Leadership in Jewish Culture, recently published an anthology on Israel's children culture and the war's impact on Israel's children. Mishael is the author of the well-known Hebrew language Haggadah Israelit and the English language A Night to Remember with his father, Noam Zion.
Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, especially in these complicated times as the world becomes an ever more distressing place. To think about children and their well-being and safety, I think, is such an important topic. In a moment, I want to share with you a short video, which we created at the Mandel Foundation in our work to try and understand what has changed for Israeli children. But I want to start just with a short personal story. In the backseat of our car on October 8th, 2023, a year ago, my 10-year-old daughter, Eliah, was trying to explain the situation to her little sister. Almost in an instinct, she tells her, "Do you remember the big bad wolf from Little Red Riding Hood? Well, he broke into Israel. He took Grandma. Maybe he took Little Red Riding Hood too. But don't worry," she says, "the hunter is looking for them. The wolf's friends have shot arrows at us, and that's why there were sirens in the last few days, but don't worry, in the end, it will be all right. It will end just like in the story." I'm silenced, driving my car, keeping my hands on the wheel, trying to peek through the mirror to get a sense of how Sapir, who just started first grade, is digesting the story she just heard from her sister. But of course, Sapir looks at her sister quizzically and shoots back, "It's not arrows, those were missiles. Everyone knows that. And I never liked that story anyway." Something about the way my 10-year-old realized that in this moment of distress, she needs to turn to stories, to fables, to culture, in order to help mitigate the situation that she's in, helped me put a spotlight in my own work on Israeli culture, to think about what is the role of culture, that culture can play specifically now for Israel's children. So I want to start by sharing with you a brief video that we created that sort of tries to summarize how has this last year impacted Israeli children. And I want to say this last year has impacted children in Israel and in Gaza and in the West Bank and across the Middle East. Our focus right now is on Israeli children, although we recognize this is part of a much wider and disturbing context in so many ways. Lionel, please, let's show the video.
עכשיו השעה 6:15, בדיוק קמתי עכשיו, אני מתה לישון, אין לי כוח לקום.
מה מחזיק אותך?
תקווה שאולי אני אצא ותקווה לראות את ההורים שלי.
אבל למה הם עושים לנו את הלילה והבוקר רע? תגיד כאן ואני פה. אני פה. ושמים את המיטה ושמים ואבא.
חסר רק ילדים, תראה, במקום זה יש לנו תרמילים וירי.
אני ילדה בת 17 שאמורה לחוות את הנעורים כמו כל נערה אחרת, ובמקום זה אני כל יום מלווה ברגשות אשם, כל יום.
שלום, אני גבן, אני בת 4 ולאבא שלי קוראים דגן. שבת זה יום של חופש, ובשבת זה יום של חופש. אם אתה תשתחרר, אם תשתחרר, אם יהרגו אותך, לא יהרגו אותך. פשוט יש לי חלום משל עצמך. צריך להמציא עולם.
מהר, לך מחבלים פה. בום, בום. ועוד פעם, תיכנס למצב. יפה מאוד, כל הכבוד.
Thank you, Lionel. I've seen that movie maybe 50 times and it still wrenches my gut every time, even though I've lived through this. I think we all have in so many ways. I'll be brief because I know we have a lot to say. War and childhood, children and wars. Just the juxtaposition of those two words is painful to the ear. War is death, childhood is life. Childhood is pastel colors, technicolor. War is black and gray and red. Childhood is hope. War extinguishes it. Children are Israel's future. War, so we thought, is Israel's past, but not anymore. From the morning of October 7th, the concept of Israeli childhood has undergone a kind of a reboot, like many things in Israel that have changed in this past year. But the harm to childhood requires special attention. Unlike previous wars, the terror of the Hamas attack reached children's rooms, their protected spaces of childhood, in physical attacks of their communities surrounding Gaza, in exposure to the sights on screens and in the news in an unprecedented way. Thousands of children have been exiled from their homes and their classrooms for over a year now, while others are forced into circles of bereavement and orphanhood. The landscape of Israeli childhood in the last year has become a landscape of war. Much attention has been given to the fields of education and therapy, such important tools as we try to help children. I want to put a focus on a third element that we've been thinking a lot about in our work, which is the field of culture. What is the role of culture during wartime? Israeli childhood and culture for Israeli children is one of Israel's secret weapons, so to speak. Many people around the world and Jews around the world don't know that Israel has a very rich culture for children. Books, movies, TV shows, music that have been going through a renaissance in the last 10 years, but really have been strong for the last 40 and 50 years. And interestingly started with Bialik and his understanding that in order to tell a new Hebrew story, we need to write children's songs. And the understanding after the 1973 war that if we want to recreate hope and a belief in peace in Israel for a country that is licking its wounds, we need to write songs about peace for children. We need to tell stories about how to face your enemy and how to hate the enemy's actions, but not to hate the enemy himself in children's stories. And now again in 2024, we believe that culture and creativity for children play a particularly important role. That literature, illustration, art, television, theater, poetry, and music, all of these serve as the sketch paper of the soul, that they help to create meaning in a world that has been broken apart from its familiar orders. Art can provide a symbolic and emotional language that allows children, as well as adults, an opening for coping and a horizon for imagination. That culture can give validity to private difficulty and transform it into shared struggle, thereby giving a sense of belonging and a building of community. That culture can mediate the acute reality in a way that is possible to digest. It distances evidence by discussion and imagination, thereby enabling processing, giving meaning, and creating community through that art. Children's culture is often the face of society at its best, as it would like to see itself. And in these moments when it's so hard often to imagine Israel at its best, we believe that children's culture, it can be a balm not only to children, but also to adults. So we've been working over the last few months on this question. We put out an anthology writing about that. I won't go into all things. I just want to end with 4 questions that we're asking and that I think will be helpful here as well. We phrase these questions through check questions that children themselves have asked over the last year based on research that we're done. The first question is, Mom, is it true that children were abducted? And that question sort of represents the way we as parents, as educators, as therapists, as cultural creators often have, do we protect or do we expose? What do we tell our children about what's going on in the world? What is the filter we place on reality? And how do we use the best lessons of culture, creativity, and storytelling to put the filter on reality that both embraces the child as an independent learner, as someone who has great ability to deal with challenges, but also protects them from the worst and most devastating thoughts and realities that have happened in this country. Second question is, what story do we tell of the face of evil? As children would ask, why do they want to kill us? What is the story of good and evil that we tell? All children's culture, like all culture, tells a moral story, says something about evil and good. And we must ask ourselves, what are the stories that we have in our own treasure chest? The Jewish stories, the Israeli stories, and the world stories. Many children have found comfort in the stories of Harry Potter, which describe a world in which you need to face evil, and children themselves can lead that battle. But the stories in the Bible, the stories of the holidays, and the stories of Israeli culture over the years can be a real asset in that as well. The third question we ask is, what is the story that we can tell about solidarity and about us? What is the joint story that we can tell? Are they from Israel? Is the way that Israeli children have asked this question. And we recognize that, like all questions of solidarity and belonging, there is also a shadow to that question. Sometimes the bonds of belonging can be so tight that they can turn us to see the enemy in the same inhumane ways that we claim we are often seen. And so how do we tell a story of togetherness and of solidarity that does not pass the line into the inhumanity that we ourselves have been treated and that we would not want anyone to be treated with? Finally, the last question, and I have to say as a parent of 4 children, all under the 18 and younger, this is the question that is searing for me. When I grow up, will I be a soldier too? We used to promise our children that when they grow up, there won't be an army anymore. No one makes that promise anymore. So what is Israel's promise to our children? Can we promise a world of peace or harmony without seeming wide-eyed? Can we tell stories still of belonging to a sort of Western world order? And when we turn to seek that promise, it's not about the words that we say. It's about the songs we sing, the stories we tell, the films we watch on TV. That's the role that culture can play in this, both in creating a healthy child, but also a child that has the ability themselves to tell their story and to see themselves as part of a new promise that we need Israel to become for our children and for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Michel. I do want to add in another question. Our prep call was only a few days after the year following October 7th, so October 7th, 2024. And our remark that we made is how come the songs of Israeli culture over the decades seem to be so fit to October 7th? How could it sound so relevant? Yet I think you made that comment. And I wonder what in your work, in researching and coming up with the anthology, and I'm sure, and you've mentioned that you met with a lot of culture creators, what's the difference between 2024 and the decades prior to? Or kind of what was something interesting that you found as you were going in this path?
So I think, I love the question. I think part of what's interesting is that over the last few years, there's been an ongoing narrative in Israel of there's too much stress on harm, too much stress on trauma, too much stress on memory. It's not normal to have kids who are 5 years old stand at a memory siren on Yom Zikaron. I remember for me as well, we had spent a few years in New York and suddenly coming back with a second grader and having her go through all of the different ceremonies of the week of memory that Israel has between Yom HaShoah, the day of the Holocaust Memorial, and Yom HaZikaron, the memorial for fallen soldiers. It felt not normal. It felt unhealthy. And suddenly in this past year, I remember standing at Shaike Elami's Community Center on Emek Refaim on the Memorial Day for Fallen Soldiers this year. My daughter was performing on the stage, and I said, this is so smart. We have within our culture the ceremonies, the songs, the tools that build resilience for living in a very challenging world, for weathering some of the hardest storms. I wish we could live in a world without those storms, and maybe we thought for the last 20 years that, as one Israeli song goes, "Hachaim shelanu tutim," our life is just cream and strawberries. It's not. And yet, that doesn't mean that I want to tell my children, all you have is suffering, and all there is going to be war. Lanetzach nochal cherev, that we will forever live on our sword. So, dafka from a culture, specifically from a culture that has that resilience to deal with weathering the storm, we need to talk about the rainbow. We need to talk about the dove. We need to talk about the olive branch that is possible, and not to let go of that. Not in a wide-eyed, innocent way, but in a hard-eyed view that we've been here before and will weather the storm again.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Yael, I would like to bring you up on stage because we've been talking about this past year, and obviously the challenges of this year has been more turbulent and unnormal, or unnormally normal for us here in Israel. But kind of as you have been doing your work and research for the past 20 years, there are challenges in everyday life too.
Yes.
And social exclusion and ostracism this year probably have been harder, and you've mentioned something about the continuities, but can you help us kind of take the theory and practice and 20 years of experience into this year, and how do you see them in your work and with Confederal?
Yes, I think that people who had problems before the war, now it's getting worse, because now it's more extreme to those people. For instance, if you have problem with your social skills, then you have to adjust to a new school, and then again you have until you adjust to your old school, then the problems are getting worse. So first of all, people who had problems with social skills now suffering more. But also when you think about society, and when you think about, for instance, classes that have their own frame, and suddenly new children are coming to their class, and now they have new problems. They have to adjust to new children coming to the class. So I see this, how it affects both to children who suffers before, and then they have new challenges dealing with, and also children that didn't have problems with social skills and now have to adjust to many changes. For instance, I think, Lionel, like you said, I have a friend that is from the north, and suddenly he's moving again, and the connections are tied and then are disconnected.
Yeah, I had mentioned that as my nephew. I don't have my kids yet, but
yes.
my nephew has a kid like that who they became really close friends, and for the past year they've been discussing whether they move back to the north, when potentially, and we're all hoping that they can as soon as possible, but or do they move and take their roots from the north to if and when they can find an apartment.
Do we trust kids? Should I trust friendship or should I not? And one of the social skills that kids are studying is how to enter a group. And now they have so many groups to enter and to go out, to enter and to go out. So many changes that this is hard. But also I thought about something when Michael was talking about a very fundamental issue that was heard, and this is the perspective function. It goes to that you have a future to expect to. And Michael was just saying about kids that usually we give them as parents future to look forward to. And one of a famous psychiatric was talking about this. It was Carl Gustav Jung, and he said how important it is that children have the perspective function, and this function was heard. And I think what Michael was mentioned, that we as adults need to invest in this function and give our children perspective, because otherwise we are trapped in a world devoid of a future. We are trapped in the present, in the past, but we need to give them future to expect. I think Michael can relate to this as the culture, how the culture relates to this gap.
Michael, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'll just add that I think that so much of how we imagine our future depends really on the stories that we have in our culture. And I think that's always been the understanding also that we end our Seder nights in Lishana Haba B'Yerushalayim Habnuya. And I think as Yael was speaking about the continuities and so on, giving that sense of past, present, and future is perhaps one of the most important continuities that we create. We do it through our regular rhythms in life, and we also do it through the stories that our culture gives. I think specifically in a time like this, both in Israel and in North America and Europe, figuring out how we talk about a long future is important. And I think in the same way for the child to imagine that the reality that they have in their classroom right now, that their whole life won't be like this, that there will come other times and other days. So I see that same kind of connection that we're making here between childhood experiences and sort of the health of society in general, to understand that there is a longer story here, and to be able to have the capacity to imagine that there will be a tomorrow, and tomorrow can be different from today.
Yeah, you mentioned groups, and thank you, Michelle. You mentioned groups, and I want to ask you, when you say groups, automatically my mind goes to WhatsApp groups, and you had mentioned the physical continuity, or kind of how relevant the place where I'm at is, but what about the virtual space? What about the digital space in all of this?
Well, the digital space is very important, I think, in those days, but because it keeps the continuity, it keeps the relationship. But for the long run, you see that if we invest ourselves too much in the virtual space, then the social skills, face-to-face skills, are being hurt. And when we talk about ostracism and the children who hurt other people, we know that as much as you stay in front of screens, the relationships are being hurt. So it's very important that children will see each other, will have strong connections face-to-face, because there is because then if it goes on, it can hurt their social skills. So
yeah, I would like to invite you to make the connection into some of the work that you've been doing with and at Kенfei, and later we'll invite Sarit to introduce the tools that we've.
Yes, I think Sarit will do it better than me, but myself, I'm just leading the helpline of Kенfei, which is a line that is meant especially for parents and children who suffer from ostracism, and they can call. And actually, I think Kенfei are doing amazing job and amazing work with children, really helping them to go out of the ostracism situation by acting with many part of the event. I mean, they treat both the teachers, the children, the group of the class, and they actually make a change. So I think Sarit can describe the tools that Kенfei actually developed, and I think they refer to my continuity when I said what I said. So I think she'll do it better than me.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lan.
And I will invite now Sarit. Sarit is from Jerusalem, and she's a mother of 3 sons. Just a second. Mother of 3 sons, an organizational consultant, and a group facilitator. And on the past 2.5 years, she's taken part in the development team at Kенfei. She's encountered instances of social exclusion and ostracism, and she realized that she could not stand aside and do nothing. Sarit, the floor is yours.
So thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'm very, very excited to speak with you about Kenfei. And I want to relate to what Yael said. Yael mentioned earlier that in time of crisis, our routines are disrupted. Yesterday is not predicting the tomorrow. So essential continuities are interrupted, and that harms the ability to function effectively. So since the war began on October 7th, we in Kенfei ask ourselves, what is our role? What we should do? What do we need to do? Especially as an organization that works daily to combat ostracism and social exclusion. So what we recognize is that the experience of those who have been uprooted from their homes, communities, schools, friends, and all circle of life. Displays closely mirror to challenges faced by our target audience. So drawing on our expertise and experience, we focused our efforts on providing meaningful support. So to have a broader impact, we collaborate with key figures in educational system, supportive services such as Yael and others, and families themselves. And together, we develop a psychoeducational kit for educators, children and their families. We named it Far From Home, but Close to the Heart. And we made this journal, this travel journal. It was designed to help children cope with this instability caused by the displacement. It provides a safe space for them to process their emotions and experience, foster resilience, and strengthen their connection with the community and family. So we distributed more than 2,000 kits and made them available to any school all over the country through our website. So we got great feedback from educators, and we hope it will help many, many kids. So in addition to the kit, Yael was mentioned our helpline. So we recognize that we also need immediate support for those who struggle with emotional toll of this situation. So prior to the war, we had developed a helpline for children and families affected by bullying, ostracism, and social exclusion. And in response to this crisis of October 7th, we expanded this service, creating tailor-made helpline. I will show you, I forgot to show you this before. So this is the kit. Yeah, so this is the kit. Do you see it? Loading, sorry. Oh, never mind.
We will see it in a moment.
Yeah, takes a while. It's coming from Israel to United States. It goes all the way. Okay.
Such an amazing job. It takes time.
Yeah, it takes time. So this is how, it's just a glance to how it looks. And this is our helpline. So we expanded this service. We created a tailor-made helpline for families and children who were uprooted from their home, offering immediate support and strategies to address social harm effectively. So we opened the helpline on December 2023, right after the war began. We received since then more than 1,000 calls. At least a third of them were directly related to the war. And we gave many children, families, and educators a wide range of possible responses to the challenges arising from the war. And I have to say that in some cases, we have extreme cases. So in this situation of when we have problems that are really deep problems that involve many difficulties, we offer something that we call smart intervention. So this smart intervention works using holistic approach to the problem, as Yael mentioned, involving personnel from related parties to end social exclusion that the child is experiences. So I would like to share with you a short video just to understand a little bit more about this specific smart intervention. Thank you. So, I will stop sharing.
התערבות החכמה זה המסלול שבעצם פועל מאחורי הקלעים. ילדים שנפגעים חברתית הם נסוגים, הם מתייאשים, הם מוותרים, הם מבקשים עזרה אמיתית, עזרה של קהילה. מסלול התערבות חכמה שמורכב מהרבה מאוד מתנדבים של כנפי דרור, מגיע לתוך הסיטואציה, לומד את המקרה ומפוגג את ההתנגדויות שקיימות אצל בעלי התפקידים. יחד אנחנו מגבשים תפיסה משותפת לגבי מה יהיה טובת הילד. הצלחנו בשנה האחרונה להחזיר הרבה מאוד ילדים לבית הספר. לחזור חזרה להרגיש ביטחון, שייכות, אמון, נראות, לחזור חזרה להיות בתקשורת עם הילדים בכיתה, עם ההורים. אם אתם מרגישים שהילד שלכם במצוקה, או שאתם כהורים מרגישים שאתם לא יודעים מה לעשות, אנחנו כאן, עם לב פתוח, עם המון כלים כדי לסייע לכם. פנו אלינו, למוקד הפניות של כנפי דרור.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarit. At this point, I would like to thank everyone and to invite our last speaker, Eli Ovitz. Eli, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Lionel. Thank you, everyone. And really thank you to those who've tuned in. I know it's different times of day. So I just wanted to say on behalf of Kנפי דרור, I've been helping Orit, Shaika, and the team to develop new partnerships with philanthropists, with foundations, and invite you to consider this timely cause, this important cause, and in fact, an emergency campaign to help the children in Israel. There are a number of ways we can help. There are a number of opportunities. Be happy to share them with you and to be able to discuss whether it be the helpline that was mentioned, building capacity in local authorities, and helping create and strengthen a smart intervention center. So there's a lot that Kנפי דרור is doing. It's not a very well-known cause because it's fairly new. And I think the issue of social exclusion and ostracism has not been top of mind for many philanthropists since we've been dealing with humanitarian and other urgent needs. But I think, as we heard today from our distinguished group of experts and those who are working in the field, helping the children on a daily basis, helping the family, the whole network, this is an issue that should become greatly important, and our attention should be focused on that. So really encourage everyone. Orit, perhaps you can put in the chat your email, and Noah, who's with us as well from the Kנפי דרור team, please do as well, so everyone knows how to reach you, and encourage everyone to be in touch. Thank you again. Thank you, Lionel, for facilitating, and may we have more peaceful times soon.
Thank you, Eli. Thank you, everyone who participated, both speakers and attendees. If there are any questions, now is a great time for that. We will stay here for a few moments. Are there any questions in the crowd? With that, I would like to thank everyone for being here with us today, supporting this cause, and understanding how valuable this mission is. Thank you, and have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Lionel. Thank you, Shaika. Thank you, everyone.
I see Patricia did ask a question, if people are still here. Do you feel that mixing groups causes more bullying cases? Maybe Orit, Sarit.
Sorry, but for the in mixing groups, you mean the groups of people who have been misplaced to the new groups? Yeah.
Yes.
I think that basically yes. And one of the things that we try to do with the kit that I presented before was to deal with it. So to give also educators and also the kids that are hosting those who came to their classes tools how to talk about it, how to empathize with the situation, and we give the educators tools to deal with these tensions, because it's very natural to have these tensions, because we have like a solid group and then we have a group coming from the outside. So we work with schools about it, and I think in schools that we have interventions, we did well. So yes, to your question. So.
Thank you.
רוצה שנאפשר לך סטייק? רבע?
רגע, שי?
she's...
Okay.
Oh, thank
you,
you,
everyone. I will close the room now. I appreciate
Okay.
your participation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.